Here we go. You pressed play on the number one track and field coaches podcast in America. You know why it's the number one podcast? Because my mom told me so, and that's all I need to know. I appreciate you guys being here on the Gill Connections podcast. I'm so humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham, National Business Development Manager of the track and field portion here for Gill. And today, this is a lot of fun for me. We've been doing this. If you're a longtime listener, you know this is kind of a tradition of ours. Every year, our friends at the USTFCCCA, great friends, love that organization, highly support, love what Sam Seams and the team do over there. Every year, through the support of the U.S. Marines, they go out and for every state, so all 50 states, they name a state coach of the year for the boys and a state coach of the year for the girls. That's amazing. I mean, the committee, that's such a ton of work. God bless you guys and gals who are on that committee. That's a lot of work. But then, and that's an impossible task, but then you challenge yourselves and you make yourself an even more impossible task. You take those 50 winners from the boys teams and 50 winners from the girls teams, and you try to decide the national boys coach of the year and the national girls coach of the year. And that's amazing to me because there are some real stories behind what led to this magical year. We've done this now for 4 or 5 years. I'm super pumped today to bring you the girls. So the USTF CCCA National Girls Coach of the Year from Collierville, Tennessee, which we're going to learn it's like 3 states or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out here in a second. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Miss Alisa Seymour. Alisa, how are you?
Hello, hello. I'm so awesome. So happy to be here. Thank you for
You
having me.
you are awesome. A national coach of the year. Get out of here. Holy.
I'm still shocked, by it all, but I'm so super excited about it. And it's been a great year. So I'm
That's so
glad to
cool.
be here to tell you all about it.
That's cool. Well, we'll get more into it as we go through your journey, but I am always like to find out what was it like. I assume they called you, or maybe it's an email or something. When you got the call, one. I assume it's 2 separate things. You got a call that you were the Tennessee Girls Coach of the Year, and then I assume, and you correct me, you got a separate call saying, "Okay, we did that. That's awesome, Lisa, but even bigger, you're the national." What was that like?
Well, actually, I think there was a bit of a delay when I was awarded the Tennessee Coach of the Year because I think they put someone's name on it by mistake. I think my nominator, I think that's what they told me.
Oh
So
no.
I actually didn't know that at first. They had to send it to my high school, and then my principal, athletic director, they sent me. Then Kristen from USTFCCCA sent
Hmm.
me an email, and then that's how I found out about that. It was a little bit delayed, I think, but that was okay. I was really excited about it when I got it, but when I still didn't think that being national coach of the year that I would actually, get that. I was
Yeah,
just
who
really
who
excited about,
who
you know,
does, right? Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was the Tennessee coach of the year for USTFCCCA last year. So this was my
Okay.
second nomination. So I was really excited about it. But I was actually in Buffalo Wild Wings in Savannah, Georgia at
Nice.
the USATF Junior Olympics with a
Right.
few of my athletes and and a parent. And we were just having lunch, and my district AD, Jeff Curtis, he called and he said, Coach Seymour. And so I'm thinking, what could it possibly be? It's July. Like, what's going on? And so he's like, I just want to tell you congratulations. And I said, on what? And he goes, well, you won. I said, won what? It's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And he was like, you're the national coach of the year. And I was like, are you serious? This for real?
Wow.
And he was like, yes. And so I said, well, I'm gonna have to get off the phone because I need to see this for myself. Because he was like, it's all on Twitter, it's all on
Yeah,
Instagram, it's
yeah.
everywhere. And I said, is it? But I was I had been at the track all day, you know. And so I looked and I saw it for myself and I just was floored.
Wow.
I was floored, and to have my athletes there, sitting there with me, and it just kind of
Oh,
made me a little bit of emotional. But yeah, I was completely shocked
that's
because
so
there
cool.
are lots and lots and lots of great coaches in this country. So to
That's
be
right.
chosen is definitely an honor.
Yeah, and that's where, when I look at the list, I love the first list that comes out, the 50 states of all the boys and girls. And I go through and I live in Illinois, so I immediately go to the Illinois ones. I'm from Alabama, so I immediately go to Alabama, and then I look through, and it's amazing. I live my life, you're with me on this one, on Twitter. So I love seeing all the coaches that we interact with, on there. And so that's always so cool. And And that's hard. I mean, you mentioned there's so many great coaches in America. You're right. Full stop right there.
Mhm.
There's a lot of great coaches in Tennessee. So even these
Yeah.
state winners, it's like, how do you parcel it out? It's so hard. And then to try to do that for the national, it's unbelievable. But
And so, like Jonathan Perkins from Mississippi,
mhm.
Clinton High School, he
Yep.
was nominated. And, when I saw that he was also nominated from Mississippi, I emailed him, congratulations, coach, on being nominated, from Mississippi, because we run against each other periodically.
Right.
And then I'm like, because he's awesome, and then for me to win and I get an email from him, congratulations on winning national coach. It's like, whoa, I'm in great company. You know what I mean? So I was like, wow.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. Well, congratulations. That is a big deal. I'm so grateful that the USTFCCCA does this award. I'm so thankful that the U.S. Marines support this award. And behind the curtains for you guys and gals that are listening. So you're listening to this probably in December. We publish these right as we get into the USTFCCCA convention, which I think we're in Dallas this year. That's a new one. But we're recording this in August. Are you going to join us? You're in Dallas. You're going to come to the convention. Yes.
Yes, I'll be at the convention. This will be my third convention.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Sweet.
I was in Orlando last year and Denver the year before. And so this will be my third convention. But yes, I will be there.
That's
Be there.
so stinking cool. All right. Well, we'll learn more about this year and what led to this award because it's a big, big deal. Again, we're so proud of you and so happy for you. But let's learn a little bit more about you. So let's get in our Wayback Machine, Alisa. Where does, assuming you were an athlete, and we have, we're on episode 300 and something, we have learned that not every coach was an athlete. That's not a prereq to become a track and field coach. But assuming you're an athlete, where does track and field start for you?
Well, I'm like I said, I'm from Gary, Indiana. That's where I was born and raised. And Northwest Indiana was a hub for track and field back in the day, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so I was in sixth grade and I went to Emerson School for the Visual and Performing Arts, and they didn't have athletics.
Wow.
So that's why I started middle school, and I was a theater major. But one day, someone in my class came to school and was talking about, running track for the Steel City Striders, which was a summer track program, which I had never, really heard of. And so I was thinking to myself, I just played outside a lot. I just came home and was like, told my mom and dad, I think I wanted to run track. And they were like, well, okay. But my parents are, once you start something, you don't quit. So their speech was, if you want to run, that's perfect. And we'll support you. But if you start, you got to at least finish the season. And I don't know if they were too sure that I was even going to be able to do it. But they were like, if you really want to do it, we can do it. So, I was like, Dad, I know I can do it. So he took me to practice when school was out. And we went and I watched the kids practice. And I told my dad, I said, I can beat all of these kids. And he was like, no, you can't. I said, yes, I can. I think I could beat them. Of course, I had never really run, track before.
Right.
I got out there, and I remember Wilbur Harlan, who was the director of coach of the Steel City Striders, and I got out there and I ran, and it was really fast, and everybody was like, oh, she can run. And my dad was like, oh, well, yeah, you can run. And that's where it started. And so I started running track summer of my sixth grade year and ran track all the way through high school. My team was coached by, well, let me start. I've had the pleasure of having some great coaches. My summer track coaches were great. My middle school coach was great at Bailey Middle School. And I even got a chance to practice with the high school team sometime. And my high school coach was phenomenal. Rhonda Brady. Jills Anderson was the first 16-year-old hurdler to go to I think it was 1976 Olympics at the age of 16. She was a 100-meter hurdler from Gary, Indiana.
Wow. And
she was my high school coach. And so I've had the opportunity to be coached by, the best as far as I'm concerned. And my high school career was great. My middle school career was great. It was a lot of fun. And when I was in high school, our team won 3 back-to-back state championships.
Well, and I always like to highlight, love that you said that, because Indiana is a one-class system, boys and girls. So when she says their team won the state championship, not 1A, 2A, 5A, 6A, the only A in Indiana, everybody, you got 10 kids in your school, you got 10,000 in your school, we're all competing for the same. So when you say you guys won 3 in a row, that is, to me, doubly good because it's the whole stinking state. I love that your lights just went out.
Hold on. Let me come back out. Hold on one sec.
We did a 50 state outdoor state championship series a year or two ago now. You got to go back and look it up. But we interviewed a coach from every state about their outdoor state championship. And that was one of the things that we learned about Indiana. Might have been the only state. I'm not sure if I remember or not. But I believe one of the only states, maybe the only state that has a one class. So when she says state title, the legitest of all state titles. So I love that. Alisa, before we get into some more of your high school and your high school coaches, and I love those. That's really kind of the meat and potatoes of what I love about this podcast is like giving flowers to those who mentored us, who helped us love the sport and things like that. You went into track early. You went in all in track early. Why track? You were obviously you don't do track. You don't do track, period, but you don't do track well if you're not athletic. It's just impossible. So, a lot of our young kids, and we encourage this, of course, play basketball or softball or soccer or whatever. Any other sports, or was it a one track mind, literally?
Well, in the city that I'm from, Gary, Indiana, it's pretty urban. We didn't really have a lot to choose from. I didn't know we had track. If I hadn't run track, my gym teacher, we played kickball and softball a lot. I probably would have played softball, but I didn't know anything about any softball teams, in the area. Right. Back then, basketball was pretty dominated by guys. Sure. You had some girls basketball team, in my 5th and 6th grade, but most of the girls played basketball with the boys. And so, I tried basketball, but that really wasn't, my sport, at that age. And then once I started track, I just was like, I'm really good at this. Now I probably could have, been a cheerleader or something else like that. But track was just it. There weren't really, and I did try tennis before track, but there just weren't a whole lot of options.
Yeah. Were there any family members that had track backgrounds, or were you the pioneer?
I think my uncle, Dan may have run track maybe in high school at some point, but not really any, prominent family members where it was like, okay, you're going to go and run track.
So I'm not getting like this sense of like the family is this track family. And of course you're running track, Alisa. It was just like, oh, you want to do track? Cool. I love your parents' attitude of like, cool, you start something, you finish something. So that was part of that. That's part of the culture of the family for sure. I love that. In what high school? So I coached at Ball State for a couple of years. So I recruited Indiana a lot. What high school did you actually go to there in Gary?
Well, I'm from, I went to Lew Wallace High School. Well, actually, like I said, I went to Emerson School for the Performing Arts. We didn't have sports, but I played sports for my home school, which would have been Lew Wallace High School.
Okay.
Now, you probably know a lot of girls that came from Roosevelt or Westside High School that went to Ball State. A lot of the Lew Wallace girls went to Indiana State. Yeah. But that's where I went, Lew Wallace High School. That's who I ran track for.
All right, cool.
And that's where I graduated from, too.
Okay, cool. I love that. So tell me more about your high school career. You talked very glowingly so far about your high school coach. Would love to learn more about her and what kind of what kind of style did she have? And what I mean by that is, there's many different ways to coach track and field. Was she a disciplinarian? Was she, the family member? There's lots of different styles. What do you remember most about how coach treated you guys?
Well, I think she was all of that. I won't say that she was a real tough disciplinarian because we pretty much, followed the rules or whatever we had to do. But she was all about teaching us life lessons. Everything we did, pretty much was a life lesson. We learned how to carry ourselves by watching how she carried herself. Our coach, she didn't work at the school. She worked, at the water company, but she had like a really good job, so we thought. So we, saw, her career and, how she carried herself. And, we knew that we could want more and dream big just because of who our coach was. Yeah. But she was pretty tough. You had to get the job done. You as the kids say, get it out the mud. It was, this is what the workout is. These are the times we have to meet. I remember one time, because I ran cross country too. Ooh. Oh God, I was a sprinter, but everybody had to run cross country. Yeah. And so cross country practice started, I think the week of my birthday. I think the first day was on my birthday because my birthday's in August. And I told her I think I started cross country as a sophomore. And I told her that I was not coming to practice on my birthday. And she was like, you gonna come to practice on your birthday? And I said, no, I don't think I'm gonna be here. I was a little spunky. And so I said, no, I'm probably not coming. And I actually ended up getting a stomach virus that weekend. And so I didn't go to practice on my birthday, which was that Monday. And she came to my house. She she came to my house and she was like, where's Lisa? She's supposed to be in practice. My mom was like, oh, well, she's sick. Like she really is sick. That's why she's not there. I was really sick for
Yeah.
real. But that's the type of person she was. Like she came.
I love that story because it makes me immediately want to ask you, Lisa, have you had any of the kids you coach say, hey, it's my birthday on Thursday. I'm not showing up for practice. And you're
I
just like,
have.
yeah, right. And you're like, what? Of course you're coming to practice. What do you mean? And little do they know, because I assume you did not have not shared the story with them. Little they know, oh, Coach Seymour also tried that back in the day. I love this like full circle. When we're on Twitter, and and you've seen it, where coaches will be like, man, I can't believe kids wear Crocs, or I can't believe kids want to off on their birthday and blah blah. And I'm sitting there thinking, I bet you tried some of that back in the day. We were all 16, 17 years old at one point. So let's give some grace here. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that she gave you grace, but she also was very much going to check up on you and where are you at? Yeah, yeah. You can do your birthday after track practice. It's all day, right?
Right.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. You mentioned you guys won 3 state titles. I love that. I think in track and field, I've said this many, many times. We get spoiled a little bit about winning because, there's 16, 17 events for boys and girls. So every meet we go to, there's winners, and we forget that winning is hard. Like it's really hard. You guys won 3 state titles. One is a big deal, by the way, guys. And you guys and gals that have won one or chasing your first one know how hard that is. Tell us about that first one that you guys won as a team. What was it like? What emotions do you remember? Were you guys favorites going in? Talk to me about that, because that's a special one, the first one.
Well, the first one that they won, I was only in the 8th grade when they
Okay.
won in 92. And then the next year, when I came in ninth grade, we won again. And it was super exciting. Well, when I came, we already knew what the expectation was. I came in with another group of great girls.
Right.
And so we knew what the expectation was. We knew that this was not a team that we just gonna come in and sit around, and we were expected to perform and do your best, at all times. And so like we were new. They had already won the year before. And so now with us coming in, it's like, okay, we have to continue the tradition. And, Roosevelt High School was a force to be reckoned with, our rival school across town. And, getting out of Northwest Indiana to go to the state championship was tough. They took 3 from the region. And so you just had to perform. I remember maybe it was my sophomore or junior year. I can't remember the exact year, but I was 4th, I think, in the 100 meters, but I was able to get the at-large bid because Indiana at that time took the at-large bids, and I got the at-large bid to go to the state championship. So if that lets what we were up against, my own teammates and the other girls that I competed against, it was tough just to get out of my own city. So
when you went to the state meet as a freshman, you already have kind of the no nonsense coach. You know that they won the year before. You don't want to drop the ball on your year. Were you nervous? How did you contribute as a freshman? How did that? And then the final after that 4x4, whenever you found out you were gonna actually be the state champion. What is that feeling like? Some of us have no idea, Lisa. What is that like?
Well, I had been running track since maybe, like I said, 11. So I was about 14 then, almost 15 when we won. I knew I had to get out there and do my job. You don't want to be the part. I think I was first leg on the 4x1 or something like that. And so, hey, get the baton around the track, execute the same thing I teach my kids today. Of course, I was probably a little bit nervous, but I knew that my teammates believed in me. I knew my coach believed in me. And so, we believed in each other. We were there because we wanted to win. So
I think
I
it
just did
says
the
a
best I
lot
could.
that you were a freshman on the leadoff. I'm not sure how many coaches do. There's a little bit of like, oof, I don't know if I want a freshman on the to pop it off. Who knows what happens? So I love that. That says a lot. Okay, you win. So they won your 8th grade year. You win your freshman year. You win your sophomore year. Yes, yeah, because you said 3 in a row. All right, this is always amazing to me. Again, because I just not that I believe, I know how hard it is to win. So when I hear of teams winning multiples, I mean, you win 1, but you're in Mike's Hall of Fame because that's amazing. You win 2, holy cow! You win 3. Who does that? And so these coaches in these programs that win multiple, I'm always amazed. One, how did coach keep you guys motivated? Like, again, we're dealing with 14 to 18-year-old kids. I don't care
Mhm.
how mature you are, you're still a kid. So that, I can see like entitlement and complacency, like, we don't need to practice as hard. We're going to win. We've won the last three. And then, so how did she handle that? And then how did you and the program and coach handle not winning that four? I mean, you've
Mhm.
won the last three. Now you show up and you don't. So how did she work on keeping complacency from creeping into the team? And then how did that feel the streak ended? They all did at
Well,
some point.
she would always, talk to us, and I don't ever really think that, we thought we were bigger than the program,
Mm.
itself. I don't. We knew all of us were striving to get scholarships, to go to college, because, unlike some of the kids today, it wasn't guaranteed, for us. We knew that, our parents were going to do the best that they could, but it was up to us to kind of like make our own way. So
Mhm.
I don't know if we ever really thought that we were better than the program,
Yeah, good.
and so she did a good job, keeping us grounded. And she would talk to us, all the time about continuing to work hard and continue to do the very best that you could. And I think one of those years we dropped the baton in the 4x1 or something. I think one of those years that we didn't win and got runner up or something like that. But of course we were disappointed, but that didn't, make us any less great athletes. And
Yeah,
so,
of course,
we
right.
learned a lot of life lessons, behind winning and behind losing. So, I don't think it changed, who we were. It changed our program, made us look at ourselves any differently. I just think it just, is what it is. You win some, you lose some.
I would never wish this on someone, but Alisa, I bet who you are today is based on things that have happened to you in the past, and not winning all 4 years in high school was a good thing for you, and dropping that baton in the 4x1 was a good thing for you, not in the moment. And
Mhm.
again, as a 16, 17-year-old kid, it's all grace to not think that this eventually would lead to, but you start learning some of those. You mentioned this. You start learning some of those lessons that only come from losing. That,
Mhm.
oh, okay, first of all, the world didn't end. This, my life is not just on what happens on the track. Oh, but I can come back and get better next year, next meet, etc. So again, I would
Mhm.
never wish that on anybody, but boy, I bet Elisa is probably not who you are today without those things happening back then. So
Yeah.
this sounds so weird. I'm happy for that. That sounds so weird. So weird. Okay, you mentioned, you're thinking about college and scholarships. Before we get to that, real quick, as a senior, is coaching at all in your mind, or what are you thinking about becoming one day as a high school senior?
Well, I really was interested in journalism,
Mm-hmm.
being like a sports journalist or something like that. My mom, though, tried to get me to major in physical education. She told me, you probably would be a great coach. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to teach PE. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And she's like, well, that's what I think you ought to major in. And I said, well, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. So I majored in communications and then switched over to journalism when I was in college. And so
Okay.
that's the path that I thought I was going to be on, but
Yeah.
I wound up doing exactly what my mother said.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how that works out. Uh, so talk to us about that leap to college. Where did you look at? Where'd you end up going? And how was that transition? That's not always an easy transition.
Well, that was, I knew I wanted to go away from home. I kind of wanted to leave my state. I know a lot of my friends went to Indiana State and
Hmm.
various surrounding schools, but my grandparents are from the South. And, I always loved, even though Memphis is kind of mid South, I always loved, down South. And so when I got the call from the University of Memphis, I was so excited. I was just like, well, whoever else is calling me out. So they called and I talked to Brenda Cash. Brenda Calhoun Cash. I don't know if you know Lee Calhoun,
Of
his
course.
daughter.
Yep.
Yes, Lee
Yep.
Calhoun, his daughter was my coach. She and my high school coach were teammates at Arizona State University before my high school coach went to be a Tiger Bill at TSU.
Yeah.
And my go ahead.
I almost asked you when you said she was, whatever age in the Olympics. I was like, man, back then she had to be a Tiger Bell. Like I know there were other great women sprinters and hurdlers and other institutions, but Tennessee State really like embraced women in track and field specifically. They were the trailblazers, if you will, for what they did. So I almost asked you, I was like, was she a Tiger Bell? Because that sounds like a Tiger Bell right there. Oh, that's so
She was
cool.
at one point, but she also
Yeah.
went to Arizona. She competed at Arizona State as well
Yeah.
before.
Wow.
And so I was just really excited, to come to Memphis, and it was just a new opportunity, a new place. I felt like when I went to school, I wanted to be somewhere that I thought I could live. And when I visited Memphis, I just loved it. And so here we are today.
Wow, that's so cool. So you go to Memphis, a great school. I coached at Troy University for quite a while, so we saw Memphis, and at Mississippi State, so we saw Memphis all the time.
Mhm.
At all the, and Kevin there now does a great job. It's an amazing school actually. It's kind of a bummer they didn't get, and I'm sure they're still working on things, but they didn't get their Pac-12 or Big 12, whatever they were trying to get
Right.
into. I mean, it's probably the next school that I don't want to say needs, but should be in one of these big conferences. It's a great city, great surrounding area. I mean, it's a
Yep.
it's a cool town and great campus. I've been there many times. That's cool. So you're a tiger. So
Yes.
you took the bell off and just said, I'm going to be a tiger. I love that.
Go Tigers, go.
So talk to me about college. I love your academic track there. I was a journalism major as well in college, so I get that part of it. You sounded like you graduated with a journalism communications degree.
I did. I
Okay.
did. So I majored in journalism. I interned at Fox News Chicago.
Oh,
I
wow.
Yes, I interned at Fox News Chicago, and then I was a CHIPS Quinn minority scholar. So I got a chance to go work for the New York Times. So my degree is in broadcast news, but I was also the sports editor for the Daily Helmsman at the University of Memphis, the school newspaper. So I did majored in broadcast news, but I worked in print. And then, like I said, I did my internship at Fox News. And then I was a CHIPS Quinn minority scholar. So I was able to get another internship working for a New York Times affiliate in North Carolina. So I was on track
Yeah.
to do.
And track coaching is not anywhere in your mind.
No, I'm not thinking
You,
about coaching track
you
at
you
all.
you went through, you had a good college career, you're happy with it, but
Yep.
nothing during college, no callbacks to high school that you're like, you know what, I'm supposed to be none of that. You're like, I'm a journalist, I'm gonna go
No.
be I don't know, the next Barbara Walters. I don't know. That's half the audience. I just lost them. They have no clue who Barbara Walters were. You're so young, you don't know Barbara Walters, but
I do.
you're
I love Barbara
okay.
Walters,
All right,
but I
all right.
really wanted to be Hannah Storm. Hannah
Yes,
Storm, NBA Inside Stuff with Ahmad
yes,
Rashad and Hannah Storm. I watched them every Saturday morning, so I
yes.
really, really wanted to be Hannah Storm.
Got it,
But
got
back
it.
then, there I'm saying back then like I'm super old, but a lot of women were not
No,
sports journalists,
no,
and so that was a really hard field to crack
that's
into.
right.
Not much money to be made at
That's right.
all, so it was a little bit discouraging, at first. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And one of the highlights of the show is when we have minorities or we have females on, because a lot of their stories, especially our coaches who've been 30, 40, 50 years, so they were in the time when we didn't have NCAA women's
mhm.
athletics. A lot of them expressed that their like inkling to get into coaching is when they saw another woman or they saw another African American coach. And I think it is really important that sometimes, and it sounds so, I don't know if it sounds silly, but it sounds so easy, air quotes there, but sometimes we just need to see someone else that looks like us doing that for us to believe in ourselves. Oh, well, wait a minute. I can do that. So I
Right.
love that. Hannah Storm was I'm gonna call it an inspiration, if you will. But you
Mhm.
were able to see someone like, oh, that person looks like me. Well, wait a minute, maybe I can do this. So I love that aspect of it.
And
Okay,
since you hold on one second, I just
yeah.
want to back. Since you mentioned, like women and minorities,
Uh-huh.
when I started running track, there was a article that came out in Sports Illustrated. I don't remember what year it was in, but it was talking about Title IX and
Mm-hmm.
women's sports.
Mm-hmm.
And this was years ago, maybe in the late 90s, early 90s. And my dad, he would take Sports Illustrated magazine and he read this article. And so when my dad read this article, it just kind of flipped into overdrive. Then track became more not as recreational as it had, at the beginning. He was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, so this is a way that my daughters can go to schools." I have two sisters behind me. My sister, that's the principal, was Conference USA champion in the discus. So she was a throw, and she was Indiana State champion in discus. So when my dad,
Dang.
read this article, he was thinking, okay, they're going to be adding women, more women's sports, more women's teams, more money for women. And he has these girls. And he's like, well, these are how my kids are going to go to school. So my dad and my mom, they pushed,
Yeah.
after seeing this. And so that was really a way that drove us into
Yeah.
athletics after he found
Yeah.
out, oh, they're pretty good. We can really do this.
Title IX has become the boogeyman, if you will, the
Mhm.
excuse for dropping some of our programs out there. Um, I don't know that it's true. I think that's the excuse our administrators and not superintendents, chancellors might use. Uh, but Title IX has probably, not probably, take that word out. Title IX has done more for women, not just in sports. I think it's a sports related law or whatnot, and maybe not. Maybe it's actually even bigger than that. But for sports specifically, it has done more to give opportunities to go to colleges, is given more opportunities to become coaches, to be other, not just a coach, administrators. What's the stat? There's some amazing stat about how many female CEOs were college athletes. I mean, there's a lot what athletics and of course track and field in that does for people. And so for women and minorities to have that ability to not be sports people, like only this many people go in to become pros, right? Nobody goes on to become pros, but that the lessons that we learn, like we talked about with some of the I'm gonna call it negative lessons we learned as dropping the baton, things like that. But there's lessons you learn how to win, how to lose, etc. Goes to make us much better teachers, CEOs, etc. And so, unfortunately, we had to have a law. I mean, that's just crazy, but that's the world we lived in, and maybe still do, unfortunately. But I love that your dad saw that and kind of really embraced it. It sounds like he's had daughters, so he was like, "All right, well, let's get to it then." I love that. That's so cool. A
Yep,
good
yep.
dad. Good dad. Okay, so you're on track, pun intended, to be Hannah Storm. Somewhere we take a left? What happens here? Keep us going.
So at the newspaper, the Lexington Dispatch that I worked at in North Carolina, I remember the owner, I think it was the owner of the newspaper, my news director, he wanted me to move to Wilmington or take an interview in Wilmington.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I don't know if I really want to go. So I don't think I went to the interview, but I did do an interview with the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies were moving back to Memphis from Vancouver.
Oh, right.
And so I got a job working for the Memphis Grizzlies in media relations.
Wow.
And then something happened and I did that for a while. And then I didn't stay there.
Yeah.
And so I think something when they first moved, they had a shift in what the jobs were. People got shifted down. They brought in people from Vancouver. It was the first year. It was just a lot going on. And I was like, well, what do I want to do? I could try to get another job. What do I want to do? So I started substitute teaching at a middle school here in Memphis because, like I need a job. My mom was like, well, you can come home, and stay for free, or you can stay in Memphis, but sweetie, you
They
got to find
charge for
something to do.
that. Yeah.
Right, you got to find something to do. So I started, substitute teaching, and the principal there, Mr. Cole, he really loved me, and I never subbed at any other school besides Fairview Middle School. I slept there every single day. And then after that, he encouraged me. He said, you a really good teacher. And even at that time, I still wasn't coaching track. He told me, you're a really good teacher. You're great with the kids. I think you should try this path, this career path. So I did that. I went back to school. But in the meantime, I started coaching a little bit with Blue City Track Club, one of the longest standing track clubs here in Memphis. And I really enjoyed working with the kids. And that's kind of like where I got my feet wet. And then I did that, and then I started school working on my teaching certification, and then I was able to get a job at Wooddale High School, and that was my first coaching job. They hired me, no experience, no nothing. I became a head coach at 22 years old.
Oh,
Um, so I've never I've never actually been an assistant,
right.
which it has its negatives and its positives.
Yeah.
Because there are times when I wish that I had maybe started as an assistant.
Yeah.
But I did have a lot of people to help to mentor me, as a head coach, but I was a head coach at 22.
Yeah.
So of course I had to learn a lot over the years, but that's how I got my start.
When up until that time where you started working with did you say Blue City Track Club?
Blue City, yeah.
Up until that time, so all the time you're working for the Grizzlies, the Lexington, etc. Where was track in your life? And what I mean by that was, like, were you still like a track nerd? Like, were you watching every track meet that was on TV? Which, it's probably only two meets. That's a terrible dig at our sport. We need our sport on TV more. Were you were you reading track and field news, or was track just kind of, it was put to the side because you got a full-time career and things like that?
I was not doing anything track and field. I mean, other than watching it on TV, if it came on, the Olympics or, whatever. But I will say that when I was a college athlete, I was always a student of the sport. I would always ask my coach questions, about this, that, or the other. Just trying to learn different things about the sport. So maybe deep down inside, I knew I wanted to maybe be a coach. I guess, I don't know. But at that point, that's just not what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I've always been a student of the sport. I always wanted to be technical about this or learn how to do that, or, so, yeah. I mean, it was there apparently, but it just was not on my brain at that moment.
We see it both ways, that, some people who turn into coaches, they'll look back and be like, oh, you know what? I did ask a lot of questions, and not questions like, why are we doing this? It was like, I genuinely wanted to know, why were we doing this workout? And why did we do this one the next day, and things like that. And then they kind of realize, like, oh man, I was kind of learning to be a coach then. And others, were like, man, I was 16 years old. My coach said, run, I ran. I didn't ask questions. I did whatever the workout was. So we see it both ways. It's interesting that you now can look back and go, I was a technical, but I wanted to learn more about why were we doing this and how does this go. So you were kind of priming the pump even back then. So I love that. Okay, so that journey is fascinating. You had to go back to school. That's hard for people. I look at people with master's degrees. I'm like, God bless you. As soon as I got my undergrad, I was like, that's all I need. I'm out. I'm not doing more school. I couldn't handle it. You go back to get your teacher certification. I love that you were a substitute teacher. My wife substitute teaches a lot as well. And so anytime I, meet a fellow sub, I know the hard work and the appreciation those other teachers have for good subs. And there's a lot of good subs out there, but to keep that classroom continuity is pretty important. So I love that you did that. So you get to you said Woodhall High School, I believe? Wooddale. And they say, hey, that's awesome. Love that you're here. You're going to be the head track coach.
Yep.
Who's the first person you call? What's the first person like, all right, I need some help here. Who do you phone a friend?
Well, Cedric Miller, who I went to college with, and he played football with my husband at the University of Memphis. He was the football coach there.
Okay.
And so he kind of helped me. He was young too, though, but he kind of helped me, to navigate. And Mr. McCullough, my principal, was pretty good. But I was there. Coach McClellan, I guess after that next year, he was the boys coach. But I just kind of learned on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
You the track coach.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of learned on the fly, and I just tried to take in as much as I could, from other coaches around me.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Young from East High School, he actually wanted to hire me before I went to Wooddale, but they didn't have any positions. And so he kind of helped me to navigate some things, a little bit. And of course, nothing is perfect, but I just was I'm thrown in the fire. I'm a head coach of a high school, so it was definitely interesting. I learned a lot with the kids that I had. Mm-hmm. We didn't win any championships or anything, but I'm still, those are my first group of kids. And so I still have very good relationships with the kids that I coached my first time around. That's cool. So it was awesome.
Do you remember a time, an incident, a practice, something that, whether it was in that first year, maybe it was the second, third year, maybe it didn't happen for a while, but somewhere in a situation like this, typically something happens, and it's maybe not necessarily an acute thing, like, a workout went well or anything like that, but it's kind of a combination of things that occurred where there's like this sense of like, oh yeah, this is the right thing. Like, why did I wait this long? Just kind of like a self-reassurance of like, okay, I'm supposed to be coach here. Can you think of a incident, time, experience like that?
Not just really an incident, but I just knew it was the right thing because I would see the success that the kids were having, just them being able to grow, as athletes, to grow as people. And just with that first group, just still having those relationships with those kids. I mean, I knew coaching was what I was supposed to be doing when I was at Wooddale. I knew that's what I was supposed to be doing. I might not have known what I was doing, really.
Right. Yeah. That's two different
But
things. I agree. Yeah.
yeah, but I knew, and I always dreamed big, but I knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing. I was excited about being there with those kids, even though my school that I worked at, we didn't have a track.
Mhm.
Um, and there was a track maybe a mile and a half away. So we would have to run to the track every day before we could actually even practice.
Wow.
Parents would have to come and drive us. But like I said, Mr. Cameron, he was one of my assistants, and always very encouraging. So like I said, I may not have known exactly what I was doing, but I knew that this was what I was doing just because I could see the impact that I was having on the kids.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've been talking about this a lot more and more on the podcast, that, the X's and O's part of it. So when I hear you say, I may not have known what to do, that to me is like X's and O's, like how do I structure long jumpers, sprinters, etc. But that the X's and O's for track and field coaching, and probably all youth coaching, and when I say youth, maybe up until the pros, maybe, and it may include the pros, that the X's and O's are actually the easy part, that it's all this other stuff. And I'm trying to find a name for all this other stuff. And I keep just coming back to culture, but how you relate to the kids, how you recruit the hallways, I'm going to say the little things, how you accentuate the positives that they do. How do you handle the negatives when they try to get out of practice on their birthdays and things like that? That all is probably more important than what we're seeing when we talk to coaches, is more important. And we don't have a mechanism to learn that. Meaning when you go to a clinic, in fact, next week or 2 weeks from now, when you're at the USTFCCCA convention, and they do a great job of all their speakers, but 75+% of all the topics are going to be, here's how to coach a shot putter. Here's what I do in the summer training for cross country runners. Here's how we do relay handoffs. And then there'll be here's what we did to change our culture at this school, or here's what we do to recognize kids in their PRs, or, that's kind of a culture builder thing like that. So I love that you had, from your past experiences with your high school coach, college coach, all those build together to bring your culture. The first culture you bring when you're the head coach is, okay, here's how we're going to do practice. I'm going to love on you. We're going to talk about this. We're going to work hard. We're going to have high expectations. That all comes from the people that did those to you, that set those expectations in you to do that.
Exactly.
So I love that. Yeah. And I love that you can recognize, hey, I probably didn't maybe not know what to do, but I knew how I was going to handle things. So how did you learn the how to do? What was typically coaching education, formal and informal, right? Formal is the USATF level 1s, level 2s, USTFCCCA academies, things like that. Informal, both are very important, by the way. Informal is, I sat down with my coach and we talked about sprint training or whatever. Those are. How are you dealing with coaching education early in the career?
Well, I did go and sit for my level 1 coaching. So that was one of the first things that I did when I was at, Wooddale. I did go and do that. And then my high school coach would always, tell me, make sure that you try to go to your professional meetings, make sure you, because I don't even think we didn't have like YouTube videos,
Right,
not at that moment. So it wasn't like I could just click on Instagram and see
right.
something, because, and then, finances too, you're a young coach, young worker, you don't really have the money to travel to these different places and do these different things.
Right.
But she would, tell me, what, maybe try this conference, or maybe try that conference, or I could always call and ask her questions. Like I said, there was some coaches in the city that I could call, and ask questions. But I mean, to be honest, I'm always, driving in my own lane. So a lot of the things I learned, I just kind of learned by doing, and learned, on the fly, and learn from making mistakes, and, trying to, okay, well, I did it this way this time. That didn't work. Maybe I can do it this way this time. And then it just keeps evolving. So a lot of the things that I learned, I just kind of learned by doing, and doing them wrong, maybe, and then doing them right.
Well, I think, I have put coaching education into two buckets, formal and informal. I think you're kind of helping me learn a third bucket, and that is self-exploration. And that can be hard, right? If we don't have self-awareness that, hey, I can make mistakes too, just because whether it's your first year or 30th year, I can make mistakes too. And if I can recognize that, that means I can adjust off of that. And that's a
Hmm.
type of coaching education, because there's some of us, who say, I know how to do this. I've been doing this for 5 years, 10 years, 20, it doesn't matter what year you put in there. I've been successful. What do I don't need to learn. And it's like, oof, okay, well, I honestly look at someone like that, and it's the rare person that actually has that attitude. But I do look at somebody who says that and go, man, how good could your kids have been? Like, if you'd have continued to get better, like they would have been. I know you've had
Hmm.
success, and that's all, but how much better could they have been if you'd have just, had some little bit of self-awareness and ego check yourself and learn from others and yourself and things like that. So you're kind of helping me craft out this third bucket of coaching education. So I love that you had that self-awareness.
Yeah.
How many years at Wooddale?
So I stayed at Wooddale 3 years, and
Okay.
then I went to Sherwood Middle School
Oh.
for 3 years, which I think was a great experience. I coached track at Sherwood Middle School, and I remember who was it that told me? I think it was Ron King, an official here in Memphis, and he told me all coaches should coach middle school. Because that's where, I mean, you can become a great coach in middle school. You can learn a lot in middle school, but
Right.
then what high school doesn't want a middle school of kids that knows certain things about track? And so coaching a middle school is even more fun at times than coaching high school, because you get to teach them. This is it's truly grassroots. I know nowadays we have all these elite elementary and middle school kids, but when you're coaching middle school, you get the opportunity to really, really teach the sport. And as you're teaching the sport, you're learning the sport and honing your skills while teaching the middle school kids the sport. So Sherwood Middle School, shout out to Sherwood Middle School. And Eric Cooper, my old principal, great experience over there. And we used to battle with American Way Middle School all the time. And I think that was a great part of my career.
Stay there. That's interesting. I coached summer track for like half a summer. Boy, the young kids, when I used to teach level ones, I used to always, all right, how many college coaches do we have? Raise your hand. How many high school? How many middle school? How many youth and club coaches? And those guys and gals, I'd be like, God bless you. I can't do it. I can't work. I don't have the patience for an 8-year-old, 12-year-old. And by the way, my two children would attest to that, because I don't have patience for them either a lot of times. What is, for someone who's done it on both sides, high school and middle school,
Mm-hmm.
you started kind of getting into, so kind of double click into that. What are the differences? You talked about teaching the kids. You still have to do that on a high school level too, but I can sense that there's a different way, or maybe a more basic level, and that sometimes people think that's a derogatory term. It's not basic. Well, you got to
Mm-hmm.
get good at the basics before you can do anything else, guys and gals. So
Right.
tell us a little bit of the differences of like coaching middle school versus coaching high school aged kids.
Well, middle school kids they're way more rambunctious, of
Ah,
course. But
okay.
in my experience, because I taught in a urban financially disadvantaged area.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so a lot of the kids, and some of the suburban areas at that time did not have middle school track. Let's just start there. So inside of the city limits, they had middle school track, but there's not always funding for it. But just to see the kids' face to light up, to know that somebody cares enough to actually teach me how to do these things, and I can be good at this, because kids start to dream early. They don't just start to dream in high school. They start to dream early, and you can instill in them, you can be a good track athlete. You don't have to just play basketball or be a major red. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but those kids, they want to learn.
Hmm.
Not that the high school kids don't, but they hang on
Yeah.
every word.
Yeah.
You're the greatest. Whatever you say, they're gonna hang on to it, and they just, because they're out there because they want to be.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I just think that that's a great part about middle school. I think I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the kids. I learned a lot about coaching. And I think one of the bonuses for me, the way that I coach, is because I'm a developer. And that comes with having to develop kids.
Right.
In middle school, everybody on the team is not going to be a phenom. And back when I was coaching middle school, nobody on the team was a phenom. So that means that you had to develop, you know what I'm saying? I was like, we didn't have middle school kids running people for. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right, right.
That wasn't a thing, trackflation as they call it.
Yes, yes.
But
That's a real thing, man.
that's a
Hey,
real thing.
and by the way, I blame coaches for trackflation. We want to talk about the tracks and the equipment and the shoes, and all that is part of it, sure. But our coaches have gotten a crap ton better over this past 5 years, kind of
Yes.
COVID and on. So if you mad at trackflation, blame yourself. You the coach. You the one who's coaching them. So I love that
Right.
you brought that up. That's so funny.
So we didn't really have that. So you're developing everybody.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
figuring out who can do this, who can do that, who can launch them, who can run a 400, who can run an
yeah.
800. So as a coach, you're having to learn, how to coach these different things because you got to develop all of these
Cool.
kids. Because I didn't really have that one or two people that necessarily that stood out.
Right.
I had to develop everybody. And so in middle school, that was just what it was.
Does Tennessee or even Memphis have a like a formalized track season? Like, is there a middle school for middle school? Is there a middle school state championship in Tennessee, or does Memphis do? Because Memphis, we've kind of glossed over this a little bit. Memphis has a heck of a track history, by the way. The city, not just University of Memphis, that plays into it. But Memphis, one of my best recruits I ever got was Marissa Harris from.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I signed
yes.
her at Mississippi State. Yeah, I mean, she was amazing. It's an amazing area for track. So does for the middle school, does Tennessee have a middle school state championship series, or does Memphis do a city middle school? Any kind of formalization up to that
Back
level?
then, back then it was just the city championship,
Mhm.
but now we have a TMSAA state championship.
Nice, very cool. I love
Mhm.
that. We do that here in Illinois too, so I love that. I don't know that many states do that, so I really like that. You talk about the next step in high school and therefore college and therefore Team USA development. To me, is more formalization of middle school track and field in the USA. I know we have clubs and summer clubs, and they do an amazing job, and certainly they're helping our youth become better high school and therefore college athletes. But if we could really formalize middle school track and field in this country, I think that's the next big trackflation, if you will, for track and field. I really do. Okay, so 3 years at Wooddale, 3 years at the middle school. Where to next?
So they opened so now let me just say this. That's two places with no track.
Oh, right.
So
That's right.
right. So neither place had a track and we
Mhm.
practiced at a grass field. So the only time the middle schoolers got to see the track was when we actually went to the track meet.
Right, right.
So they didn't go to track. So I really wanted to. By this time, I'm bit by the track bug. Like I want to be a track coach, like for real, for real.
Mhm.
And they built a new high school in Southeast Memphis called Southwind High School,
Okay.
and it had only been open 1 year. It didn't even have all the grades yet. And I interviewed there, and then I became the head track coach over
Of
at
course.
Southwind High School, and I
Yeah,
was there
that's what you
15
do.
years.
Holy, 15 years.
Yes.
Wow. So
Mhm.
you really like you were one of the first ever track coaches there, and so you
Yes.
developed that whole program.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Did you get a
Yes.
facility?
They had a facility. Yes, they built a brand new school, brand new track, football
Yeah.
stadium, weight rooms, everything. So I was able to go to a place where I could at least go outside to the track every day and
Yeah.
practice.
How did you adjust to that? Because what I mean by that is, you did 6 years of coaching without a track or having to run a mile and a half to go get to a track. Now you
Mhm.
have a track that your workouts have to look differently, your equipment needs. How did you adjust to like, oh crap, I actually have a facility. I can do other things.
Well, it was a breath of fresh air on one hand, but then on the other hand, everybody that's new to the school has a new facility. So now it's like, who can use it when it's mine? You know what I'm saying? So that
Right,
was,
right.
of course, there was definitely an adjustment period there because you walk in like, oh, hey, I got all this. And the football coach is like, you know
Yeah,
what I'm
it's
saying?
not your facility, it is the school's
It's
facility.
a
Right.
school,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? But the good part about that was that Cedric Miller, remember I mentioned him,
Mhm.
who's the football coach at Wooddale, was the then football coach at Southwind.
Oh, nice.
So he was the boys track coach too. So we kind of gelled well together and we were able to cooperate and work really hard. And both the boys teams and the girls teams were really good. So
Yeah.
it was just, Southwind is home. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, we look at each individual's part of your entire journey up to this, point when we record
Mhm.
here. Uh, but there is also like big segments inside of that overall journey. So, 3 years at one school, 3 years at the other, different levels, high school to middle school. One, you only had a grass field. They only saw the track when you went to meets. The other one, you had to run to a track. And now you're at a place where you have a track. How did
Mhm.
you, when you think about those 15 years, it feels like my guess would be, I guess I shouldn't say feels like, my guess would be a lot of your development as a coach came during this part because like, oh, I have my facility, I'm there for a long time, meaning you can, your program continue to grow and adjust as you move through the years.
Mhm.
You start your own culture there. You recruit in the hallways, things like that. You learn how to get kids recruited to colleges. You recruit kids to your team. Talk to us about that time. How did you develop? How did you grow as a coach during that 15 years at Southland?
So, like I stated earlier, in Memphis proper, the middle schools had track and field.
Right.
Going into Southwind, which was a Shelby County school, which was different from Memphis city schools.
Okay.
So you have a Shelby County school, and the suburban schools or the county schools did not have track and field as a sport for middle school.
Okay.
So when I get to the high school, a lot of the kids that I get from my feeder schools have never run track before, unless they run for maybe a SYS program, Shelby Youth Sports. But a lot of them had never run track before. So this was a totally new experience because you develop at one place, where at least you could run to a track, and then they had middle school sports, and you develop at another place, which is middle school, and all the kids are hyper and energetic and ready to go, and they play all the sports. And then you get to a high school where you got high schoolers who've never actually even run track because this is not a city school. So that's a different challenge because now you have to figure out, well, how do I train these kids who've never participated in track before? Most of them, I think my first class of kids pretty much did dance. And then I was a cross country coach too. So I was a track coach and a cross country coach, which was new because I had never been a cross country coach. And so I'm learning a lot, just having to deal with that. But I learned at Southwind, of course, how to develop kids. I learned, because I'm making my own budget, equipment needs, how to get sponsors, working with other coaches in the building, the turnover with assistant coaches, because I'm kind of intense. So, everybody don't want to be a track coach. And, it's like, woo, you work for her. Like, my God.
Sounds like everybody doesn't necessarily want to be a track coach with you as the head coach. Hold on now.
Well, but you know what? I'm so passionate about what I do. And that's true because I'm a winner. I want to win. I want to get the best, out of everybody. And that takes work. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
When you coach track, you coach in the rain. You coach when it's cold. You coach when it's hot. You coach when it's, all of the elements, and it's work. Track has so much equipment to move. You know what I mean? And we rarely have trainers or managers, at the high school level that help you do all of those things. So being a track coach is hard work.
That's right.
And you always, I think, when you're a female track coach or the only head coach in the building that may be a female, you kind of have a little chip on your shoulder because you constantly have to prove that you can do, the job, well. And so, being my assistant coach can be a lot. I know a lot of people that might tell you that.
Hey, but the same can be said about your athletes too, right? Not everybody can run track. Some people don't want to run when it's cold, when it's rainy. They want manicure track. I only want it when the weather's great. Well, guess what? Welcome to America. The track season's never going to be great as far as weather and things like that. So it's not for everybody. Thank God there's other sports for other people. So, and thank God there's track and field. So how have you, when you look back at your first year there at Southwind versus I think you said 15 years, your 15th year, how did you get better as a coach? And that isn't, maybe X's and O's is one part of that, but how did you recruit assistant coaches better? How did you figure out the scheduling better? How did you figure out how to handle 90% of my freshmen have no clue what a track is when they come into me? So I've got to really, but I also have 100% of my seniors do know because of it. So how do I mesh that? Talk to us about that transition for you as a coach.
Well, as I was there, I started to maybe use my resources, wisely. We started to get sponsors from businesses in the community, just trying to get out in the community more. And when it came to hiring coaches, I did have a lot of turnover, at first, but after you tried to find coaches with certain levels of expertise, because as I grew, our teams grew and they got better. Right. And as we got better, then more kids, wanted to come to our school to be a part of that team. And so you want to make sure that you have coaches in place that can coach those athletes. And so I was able to hire some different coaches that had expertise in different areas and just to help the program continue to grow, because at Southwind, we won the state championship in 2018. And then we got runner up in 2019, and then COVID happened in 2020. So, but it's just the progression. You can see the progression from, because we got third in 2016. So I got there in 2008, and we just worked and worked and worked and worked. And, we had some girls that we went to state every year. So we never missed the state championship at Southwind, and we always placed, in something, and we would score some points, maybe be in the top 10, maybe not, but we always were progressing. And so by the time 2016 came, we were third in state in that year. I had 5 girls to sign scholarships that year, 5 in that class. And then the next year, we graduated all those girls. And then 2017, we took 1 girl to state. And then in 2018, we won state with a bunch of freshmen and a senior.
Wow. I would have thought, I would not have guessed, third. I thought you were going to say, and then the next year we got second, and then we won. You dipped down to where it's like, man, we only had 1 kid that could make it. And then the very next year we win. Yeah. Was there ever a time as you're from 08 up until 18 when you won the title, right? 18. Was there ever a time of discouragement of like, man, we're just not going to win a state title here. We don't get the funding. We don't get the same, maybe your school probably wasn't the biggest school. So, we don't get the same number of kids other kids get, whatever. It's hard to find, no matter where you are, by the way, it's hard to find good assistant coaches. And I don't mean that to disparage our assistant coaches, of just like, when I say good, meaning they come with like, oh, I want to be a coach. Most just want to help out or whatnot. And there's a place for that, but there's also, we need people who want to like become better coaches, and they're for their kids and stuff like that. Was there ever a moment of discouragement, or was it always like, oh yeah, we're on the right track, boys and girls? It may not have happened as quickly as maybe I want it, but we're getting there.
Well, all the time, because we have we had a big rivalry with a school, Whitehaven, and I think they had
Whitehaven, yeah, sure,
yeah. So that was, and the coach and I were really good friends, and they would just beat us all the time, and we would get second. We would be really, really good. But it was, the dynasty that they had put together with Maya McCoy and, all of those other girls. And so at times it was discouraging. And I've even had coaches to say, hey, coach, you guys did a great job. I kind of like took your model, and, that's what I put in my team. And we had the talent, and, we won. And so, yes, there were definitely times where I was, a bit discouraged, because in my mind, I'm thinking, I know I'm a good coach. I know I'm trying my best to do the right things. But it just hadn't happened for me yet. And that's one thing that even in today's time with the younger coaches that I see, they always like, oh, you guys are doing so good. I want to be like you. Why can't I beat you? And I have to remind them that it's a progression. You have to put in the work. I mean, everybody doesn't win a state championship in the first year that they're coaching, and it took a while, but through that journey, I've learned a lot, how to deal with administrations, how to deal with parents, how to deal with kids, learned a lot about myself. And so it didn't come fast for me, but I'm thankful to God for that it didn't. So,
I would agree. And I would add that statement. I'm thankful for God that it happened the way it happened. I truly believe another topic that we talked a lot about on the podcast here in the last few months is that you are exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And that doesn't mean you're stuck there, and doesn't mean you're in a good place either, by the way. It just means that where you are today is exactly where you're supposed to be. It's kind of a tough tug of war, if you will, when you talk about young people or young coaches, so young athletes, young coaches that, want to win. Why can't we win right now? How come I haven't won the state title in the first 5 years of my career, whatever? And I call it this, kind of tough tug of war, because on one hand, you're like, well, I love their competitiveness. I like that they want to win and that they're doing the things that you should be doing to win. But on the other part of that rope for the tug of war is, I also want you to think long term. You're going to be coaching hopefully for 20, 30, 40 years. You're not going to win 40 state titles. I mean, no, I don't want to say no one does that. I'm sure someone has amazing coaches out there. But, it's like this weird tug of war. It's like, man, I want you to be competitive. I love that. Don't quit. But also realize it does not happen for everybody that quick either. That, it may take the 12th year, or the 20th year, or the 25th year. Oh, and by the way, you're not defined by that. If you have your entire career and you don't win a state title, that does not mean you were not a good coach. You can still be a Hall of Fame coach and not have a state title, national championship on the college level, etc. So again, we got to remember, it is so hard to win. It's not easy. If it was easy, well, then it wouldn't matter. So, okay. So 15 years at Southwind, and state title and state trophies and college kids going to colleges. That's amazing. Why'd we leave and where'd we go?
So I had said that in 2020 I was going to maybe retire from coach, because even when I started, I said, "Oh, I want to do this. I do it for like 5 or 6 years, and I'm gonna, go back into whatever else that I wanted to do. Or maybe now I want to be an athletic director. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen, and so I said, well, you know what? In 2020, I'm gonna retire. I'm not gonna coach anymore. I just was like, I'm kind of tired of it. But then COVID came.
Okay, I was gonna say, did you say that before COVID? That's what I was wondering. Okay,
that was before COVID.
Keep going.
And then COVID came, and I was like, you know what? I really can't, because when COVID came, they had told us we weren't going to have a season. We had already started track season. We had run our first track meet, and then we went to spring break on Monday. Then we never went back to school. And so I had a whole class of kids, and I just said, you know what? I owe it to them to finish. So then what we did is that when a lot of other schools stopped practicing, we didn't. We whatever the guidelines or regulations that they gave us, we worked within those guidelines, but we did Zoom practices, virtual practices, all kind of different stuff to stay relevant. And then we still ended up going to the state championship. Some of those girls did. We didn't win anything, but because some of the other schools still practice, every day. They were still going to school, things like that. Our district just was not. And so I said, well, you know what? I can't quit. I just can't, because I owe it to these kids to finish. And so they did. And then it just, I don't know. I'm one of those people, I don't move until the Lord tells me to. And he told me that it was time for me to make a change. And I had no idea where I was going. I was fine there. But then when Collierville called, I said, well, you know what? Maybe I'll give it a shot and we'll see.
So from there to Collierville.
I lined it up over here. Yep. Yeah. And Collierville's on the same street. So think about this. Southwind's in the middle. We're all on Shelby Drive. So Southwind is 7900 East Shelby Drive. And then Whitehaven is kind of off of Shelby Drive, way down on the other end, which is our rival school. Right. And Collierville is 11605 Shelby Drive. So
really? Wait, so like how many miles in between?
I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 miles, maybe 4 miles.
No way.
Collierville built a new school maybe about, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's right down the street.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. That's interesting. So those kids all, like, they know each other. They grew up together. They played on the same little league baseball team.
Maybe some of them did. Yeah. But because the school I was at was in Southeast Shelby County, and Collierville's a little ways down. It's a different school district.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the kids do know each other, but none of the kids from Southwind came to Collierville with me. So this is a whole new team.
Wow.
Well, the team was already in place.
So what did you do? And it could be fair. The answer could be nothing, because you had success at not Whitehaven. Oof, I almost got in trouble there.
Please,
Southwind. So I know. As soon as I said, I was like, stop. Southwind. You had success at Southwind, so you're building your style, if you will. Same question I asked you about your high school coach. What was her style? The same question could someone on your team could have been asked about you. Like, what's Coach Seymour's style? And they would talk about, oh, well, we do this and this and this. So you've got that now, and it's successful. What did you do, if anything, different when you got to Collierville? Because you just mentioned you wipe it out. It's a whole new team. No one knows who you are in regards to, they know who you are, but no one's ever worked out for you and stuff like that. So what do you do differently?
Well, I think I didn't really change too much about my coaching style from Southwind to Collierville. Like I said, I'm pretty tough as far as a coach is concerned. I'm a kind of the get in your face type of coach. I just maybe say what I need to say a little differently. I just coach maybe a little differently than I did, but I think I get the point across to my kids the same way I would have if at another school. I just maybe just do it a little bit differently, but I brought the same principles, same work ethic, same drive, same everything to this program. And just like I said before, I'm a person that truly dreams, big. And so Collierville is, the top school in the state and has the best facilities, ever. And of course, it's more to manage. When I said dream big, I didn't think I was going to have a team of 80 kids. Now the boys coach and the girls coach.
Yeah.
So I've coached both genders. And just navigating, using the weight rooms and, the tracking, because we pretty much have, everything that we need. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but I just brought the same drive that I have, the same expectations, the same everything pretty much from Southwind over here.
Was Collierville the first time you coached boys?
Yes.
So my question is not, I have vowed in the 6 years we've done this podcast to never ask a coach who is a woman, what's it like coaching boys? That's not ever my question. My question is actually much more general of you coached one sex, women, girls, all the way through. Now you add a different sex, you add the boys to it. How was that adjustment? So not hear my question. My question is not you as a woman, how was it coaching the other opposite? It's how did you add a whole, they are different. Let's be real, at least in my experience, coaching boys and coaching girls is different. There are differences, I should say. You are used to one style, girls, you added a different, you had the boys to it. How was that experience?
Well, coaching the boys, I'm the same tough on the boys as I am on the girls. The first year here, the boys did really well. They were this close from breaking the state record in the 4x4. We had a bunch of seniors that year. It's just that on the boys' side, we keep graduating kids, and we have so many sports, football and basketball and all of that. So, it's a little bit more challenging. And then our feeder schools are really good, West and CMS, with, and sending athletes, our middle schools that are in our town, sending to us. So it's a little bit more challenging, but they get the same work. They get the same work, the same Coach Seymour, the same. And something I did do differently here, I'm blessed because I'm able to have such a large staff. I have 7 or 8 coaches over here. So I have enough people to go around to help coach the boys and the girls in the different areas. And so, you see me now as National Coach of the Year for the girls, but keep looking out. Boys are coming too.
Dude, that would be amazing. I think I can confidently say no one has won the boys Coach of the Year on one side 1 year, and then the girls. That would be, I mean, that'd be amazing. I work hard at not having repeat guests only because there's so many coaches out there and I only do 52 a year. I might make an exception for that, Alisa. If you win the boys here in the next year or two, you coming back.
Don't make me put that on my vision board. All you boys coaches out there that think I can only coach girls, don't make me put that on my vision board.
I heard you dream big. So yeah. That'd be awesome. That'd be really cool, actually. So what was I going to ask about that? So my experience coaching boys and girls, the difference is girls, and this is my experience, and I say women, I coach college. Every woman that I coached, every female that I coached, it was almost like they thought they were not good at all, ever, no matter how good they were or were not. It was a constant, like uplifting of them, like, hey, you can do this. You are one of the better ones. I had a 22-foot 44, I think she's doing 44, long jump, triple jumper. So she, all American. I mean, she was awesome. And every day was a battle. Like, I'm just not that good, coach. Those girls are better. I'm like, so it was always uplifting. Every boy, and I've coached 38-point 4x1s, 3 flat 4x4s, coached pretty good teams. All the boys, no matter how good or how bad, no matter how often they came to practice or didn't come to practice, they all thought they were going to win the Olympic gold medalist.
Yes.
And I was like,
the same.
Oh, okay. I was like, you don't even come to practice. Like, what do you mean you're going to win the gold medal? So for them, it was almost like I had to knock them off the medal stand of like, you need to start doing this first before you can think about this. I would rather be in a constant state of uplifting someone that had self-doubts versus always like, I don't want to say tearing them down, but pulling them back to reality, if you will. That was my experience between male and female coaching. It was like, oh, and there were certainly outliers in each one of those, but man, it was just like, here's this 22-foot long jumper. I'm like, you are freaking awesome. What are you talking about? And here's this, 1050 sprinter. Like, I'm gonna win the Olympics. I'm like, 1050. You missed practice yesterday. What do you mean? So that's been my experience coaching boys and girls. My experience
I would have to agree.
Yeah,
I would have to agree. Boys, no matter what, they always think they're gonna be top dog, regardless.
Yeah.
Now I don't have to really push my girls to believe that they can do. A lot of them, they believe they can, and I tell them to trust their training. That you can do this.
Yeah.
But with the boys all the time, it's like, I'm the best no matter what. I only been here one day, so we're definitely trying to change, that narrative. Being on social media and posting all these wonderful pictures all the time is not going to get you across the line first.
Right.
And so, you know, we live in a day and age where we really have to, you know, hone in on that. But yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
I love that you have a different experience that on the women's side, that it's, you know, like they don't necessarily have that so much. I love that. Because I was going to say, you know, that experience for me is also 20 years ago. That was before cell phones, before social media, et cetera. And that certainly has changed things. And I'm not putting this on the social media saying that they were the reason why it changed, but I love that there was some positivity as young people are growing up here throughout, you know, now we're in 2025, that it's that maybe that's a little bit less of a problem. That's a good thing, I think, in that opinion. Up until the girls start thinking that they're going to win gold medals no matter what, no matter what they should, then they'll be like, oh God, now you guys are all in the bad column. Okay. So 5 years. So 2021 was the first season at Collierville. Is that correct?
23, 22, 23.
23.
Yeah.
Okay. So 23, 24, 25. So this is
This is coming up to my 4th year.
Okay, thank you. I'm from Alabama. Math's not my strong suit. Sorry. So yeah, I had to use both hands to get to 3. I don't know how that happened. Yeah. Okay, so 3 years. So let's stay on the girls' side here specifically. We're going to start leading up to the award here now. So in 2023, first year, how was that season?
That season was pretty good. I'm trying to see. The boys and the girls, we won. We got runner-up in sectionals that year. Okay. In 2023. So that was a decent season.
And remind us the process in Tennessee: sectionals to state, or is there something in between?
Sectionals to state.
Okay,
sectionals to state.
So runner-up as a team in sectionals. Okay, got it. Perfect. Thank you. How do we do at state?
We didn't do as well as state. Was a bit of a disappointment, but I do think that part of it was. So at Collierville, I had to change the culture just a little bit. A lot of times, you know, kids will track is more like recreation, more like a club sport. But I did have to come in and, you know, be like, look, you can win. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, so I do.
So it's a little bit of change in the culture. So I think that first year at state, the kids had a little bit of shell shock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just a little bit of.
I hear you saying different expectations, because I don't necessarily, for any sport, by the way, but for track and field, you know, people join, especially in high school. I think there's a difference, somewhat of a difference as we go to college, but on the high school side, people, you got your lighting crew working for you. I love it. The people join track and field for many different reasons. And you've seen this through your career. You have the kids who join because I want to be good, I want to go to college or whatever. And there's kids who are like, oh yeah, I'm here because my girlfriend Susie is here.
That's right.
None of those are bad there's many reasons in between, but none of those reasons are bad. There's a place. This is what I love about track and field. No matter tall, short, wide, thin, you're here because your best friend is here. You're here because you want to win a Olympic gold medal. There's a space in track and field for you to be successful. I believe that, right? So that's not wrong. You just change the expectations. Like, hey, that's cool, but we are going to have our eyes on the prize. That is, if we don't hit here, we're going to have a little disappointing season. We're not going to be happy because we're kumbaya here. That's right. Okay. Yeah, I get that. Okay, so 23. So not that great at state, runner-up in sectionals. 24. How'd that go?
So 24. We started early. We started the off season, working, implementing some different and new things. We went to the Penn Relays the year before. Thank you. Wow. Went to the Penn Relays the year before. And I think the kids had really, truly bought in, you know, to a certain extent. And then we go to the state championship in 24. We score 131 points, the most points scored in AAA. And Collierville hadn't won a state championship since in 39 years when Nikki McCrae was a member of the track team. And so that was the first state championship that the track team had won in that period of time. So
in 1 year, you go from, we had a disappointing state meet to I set the state meet record for points. That's interesting, because I think there's coaches out there that, you know, maybe it's because of our sport. You know, if we're a miler, we think about running 4:30 first, and then 4:25, and then 4:20. We don't think about running 4:30 and then 4:10, right? We think of a progression. So I think a lot of us in the coaching world think like, oh, you know, we were 10th at state last year, so maybe we can be 7th, and then we can be 4th, and we can be 3rd. You took a major leap. What was the big difference? I mean, that's a large difference.
Well, like I said, winning state was always the goal. You know, the goal, because, you know, coming from Southwind, we had already won state. So there's no need to really leave a school. If you're going to go to a school, you don't go to a school thinking I'm just going over there. I'm
Right.
not
Yeah.
going to just, we're
That's right.
going to win. So
That's right.
the whole goal was to build the type of program with the resources that we have, to build the type of program to be able to go, and win. Now, I don't know that we set out to win by, to
Yeah.
score
Right.
131 points, but the goal was, we have the personnel, we have the coaches, we have everything that we need in place.
Right.
We're going to go up here and execute and do our job, and not have a repeat of what we had the year before. I think the kids have bought in. They were excited.
Yeah.
They believed, in themselves. I know that I can do this. And that's just, and we went up there and took care of business.
Was that the major difference then, you would say, is you had another year to put in your program? And so that
Yes.
means more kids are bought in. The kids that were bought in, they get more bought in. There was
Yep.
just more time for you to run the system. I'm gonna call it the Seymour system. You know what I mean when I say that.
The Seymour way.
The
Is what we
Seymour
said,
way.
the
I
Seymour
love it.
way.
Yeah. So you had more time to implement that across the team.
Yes, and more time to implement it, and more time to get, the buy-in from everybody, the
Yeah.
buy-in from, even the new coaches that we hired, the
Right.
buy-in from the kids, the buy-in from the parents,
Yep.
because it's a big thing. And being new, you have to get the buy-in, from
Yeah.
everybody. There's some rough patches and some tough times, in there, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But it helps to bring us all together.
Yeah.
And I think after having all of that, we went to the statement and said, we're here on a business trip. We're not here just to have fun or play games. We're here to bring this trophy home. And that's what we did.
And forgive me, 24, that state champion, the 131 points, that was the boys, the girls?
That was girls.
Got it. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Did you, as you were going through the 24 season, were there times where you were like, oh yeah, I think we're going to win the state title and big time? Or was it kind of was it like a surprise? And what I mean by that, it's like, yeah, we went there knowing we'd be a favorite, but then just everything hit on all cylinders and you end up scoring 131.
Well, I knew we had a shot. Brentwood in 2024, Brentwood High School was really big competition. They have some really good coaches, great girls. I knew we had a shot, but I knew we'd have to get past them in order to do it. And the girls, I mean, they went up there and they just showed out, and I'm big on, execution. A lot of people are maybe big on, other things like the flashiness and the talking trash and all the different things, but I'm not really big on it. I'm big on, execution. And I want the state meet to feel like any other track meet, because we had gone to Atlanta, Georgia that year. Went to a few other places, and I never want the state meet to feel like the biggest meet that they've ever been to. When you go to the Penn Relays, you can come to Tennessee and run. It's not even that many people in the stands as far as where you have been. So when we wake up in the morning, we do the same things we've been doing. This is just another track meet, and we go to this track meet and we execute. And
is that new to Collierville when you talk about, because I was going to ask about Penn Relays, like who goes there from Tennessee? No one. Now I'm starting to understand the method to the madness here. I love this. But is that new to Collierville where you went to Atlanta and you went to Penn Relays, or were you doing that through Southwind as well?
We did that at Southwind as well.
Yeah.
So at Southwind, when I first started there, they would the different colleges would have meets, like Mississippi State, Ole Miss. They would have meets. We would go to the Jackie Joyner Kersey Relays in East St. Louis. We went to the Penn Relays. We would
where did that
we would go to Homewood, all of that.
Where did that come from? And what I mean by that is I don't know, and maybe this is just me out of touch. I'm not a coach anymore. I don't know that that's happening a lot. I think a big trip is the state meet, or a big trip is 2 hours away to go to these college meets. And I know a lot of college. I shouldn't say a lot. I know several schools, colleges that host high school meets, and there's a reason why they do that and all that kind of good stuff. And I love that because it gets them on college campus. It helps the kids see like maybe I can go to college one day. So I love all that. But are you an outlier doing that, or like everybody in your conference is also going to the Penn Relays in Georgia or Atlanta, etc.?
I won't say that I'm an outlier now. I think maybe, I was, but I think more people are doing it now. One of our other schools here in Memphis, Barlow High School, they've started to travel, to different meets and stuff. But I do think that, at Southwind, I was one of the, the few high school coaches traveling.
Mhm.
We would go to New Orleans, to Sugar Bowl meets, because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
better your athletes are, you have to expose them to
Yeah,
different areas of competition, get them in front of different coaches,
yeah,
and just show them that there's more than what their surroundings are.
yeah,
And I learned that, even take it all the way back to high school. Jackie Joyner Kersey would have her meet in East St. Louis. And
yeah.
so we're from an urban community, not a whole lot of resources,
Okay.
but we went to that meet every year. And that was a
Mhm.
highlight, of our meet. Of course, the state championship was a little bit different, but our coach did take us,
Yeah,
different places, took us there. So my goal is to always give my kids the best possible opportunities,
yeah,
that I can. Right now I have a team of different levels of talent, top, middle,
right,
and you have to be able to accommodate. It's not cookie cutter. It's not one
right.
size fits all. So you have to be able to accommodate, be able to coach, and be able to do different things with the different kids that you have on the team to make sure everybody has the right type of experience,
Mhm.
for high school track and field. And so I just think that that's really important. The state meet should not feel like it's the end all be all
I,
of
I,
everything.
I love that. I want to make sure people heard that, that the kids have the right type of experience, meaning I'm assuming not every kid made it to pin relays, things like that,
Mhm,
for many reasons, whether, and take financial out of it, even though I know that's a
mhm,
reason for some too. But it's like, man, you're a freshman who's running 13 flat in the 100. I don't know. You're not ready to go to pin relay. That's not going to be a good experience for you. So we're going to take you to this meet, whatever. So the
mhm.
right type of experience, I thought was a pretty important statement there. I love the way your goal is almost to minimalize the state meet, and that doesn't minimize that the state meet is important, but that you don't want them to be like, oh, this is the biggest thing ever, and so they start tensing up and all that. It's like, man, I went to pin relays. I ran in front of 20,000. This is important because I need team title or points for the team title at state, but there's 5,000 here. I'm good. I don't have to get nervous here. That's
Mhm.
great, and I think that almost to your statement of the right type of experience, I think that probably does help some percentage, but I have to believe, because you're dealing with 14 to 18-year-old kids, that does not carte blanche help 100% of the kids. They're still
Mhm.
kids. They're still going to the state meet. We've talked about winning the state meet, because it's important to coach and
Mhm.
important to us.
Yeah.
I'm sure kids still do get nervous going to
Mhm.
the state meet. How do you coach a kid? Think about, I think about like someone on your team is you when you were a kid. They're a freshman. They're your lead off on your 4x1, and they're like, Coach, I am nervous.
Mhm.
How do you coach a kid through that the night before, the hour before, during warm up? How do you help that kid? How do you mentor that kid?
Well, people all the time, they have this cliche saying, trust the process. Oh,
Mhm.
I hate that saying so much. Simply because what is the process?
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
like trust the process. Okay, so what is the process?
Yeah.
So I tell my kids, trust God, trust your training, trust yourself. You know, you know what you've been doing. You know what you are doing. Now you just have to trust yourself to do it. Trust your training, because you do this every day, every week, every track meet. So now trust yourself to go out there and do it.
I love that.
And if you have laid the proper foundation, and now of course the child is going to be nervous if you throw them out there on third leg and they've never run third leg
Mhm.
before. But you do know to get the baton around the track, regardless whether you got it in your left hand or your right hand or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
The next person has to have it. So that's how we minimize some of the fear. As I just know I
Yeah.
got to do my job.
Yeah.
Just go out there and do what you've been trained to do. Whether
Yeah.
it might not even be perfect. You might be carrying the baton in between your two fingers, but it has to be passed. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So even if you don't get out the blocks best, okay, after the drive phase comes acceleration. And so
Right.
we got to get there. So
So what I hear you saying is you don't, because some people will do almost the opposite, and both have been successful, where the state meet, little Johnny, little Jane, this is the most important meet in the world, and and you're ready for it, but oh my God, everybody's watching, this is going to cement your legacy. And I hear you kind of doing the opposite of, like, almost like a been there done that type of attitude of, like, you've done this in practice a million times, you've done it in meets 100 times. Just do what you did to get here. Almost, you hear that a lot in the college world qualifying for nationals. It's like, just do what you did to get here, and you'll be successful. Trust me. I hear that kind of attitude, almost like that been there, done that type of
mhm.
philosophy, if you will.
Yeah, I just try to take the pressure off.
Yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
this year when we ran the 4x4, they were like, "Oh, coach," because we this year we scored 155 points, and so this year they're like, "Coach,
That's so
do we have to
silly.
run
I mean, that's silly. Did you let anybody else score any points? I mean, how many points are there in total for crying out loud?
Yes, of
Jeez.
course.
Of course, yeah.
Um,
Without naming name, hold on. I want you to finish your story, but I'm sorry. I'm just
okay.
trying to get over this amount of points you just said, which is just silly. Without naming names, because we're not trying to minimize anybody here. You
Hmm.
scored 155. You said.
Hmm.
What was second place points? Don't mention the name. People can go look it up. How many points did they have?
Like 86,
Yeah,
maybe.
see, that's silly. You doubled them up essentially. That's crazy. Okay, go back to your story. We'll get to that in a second.
So, so they
Golly.
asked me, Coach Seymour, do we really have to like run the 4x4? Like,
Oh, because you smoked
yeah,
every.
we
Yeah, yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
said, yes, we're here to finish the job. But I did tell them, okay, but you don't have to go out and like break the state record or
Right,
anything.
right, 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 right.
Just run.
Yeah, go
Just
have
run.
fun. Yeah, yeah.
But then they did still go
Broke,
out.
broke the state record.
Yes. The
Yeah,
record that was set by my previous team, Southwind,
of course.
and some years ago.
I
So and they broke the state record in 4x2 as well. But they had already broken both of those records earlier in this
right,
season.
right.
So I'm like, just go and do and
I
I don't
think
know. I just the God has been good to us. I will.
yeah. I think there's a lesson there about when and again it's just that weird tug of war. You want people to know that these things are important, but you don't want them to be so stressed out of its importance that they tense up, that they crash out. It's almost like, yeah, take it easy, just have fun. But yeah, it's important. It's a weird tug of
Yeah.
war, coaching and specifically track and field is. So I love that. Okay, so 131 points in 2024, and then 2025, you're like, well, that's not enough. So you score 155 points and win the state title again. Holy cow. How many kids did you lose from the 24 graduating? Well, I shouldn't say graduation. Some kids decide not to run track anymore. They go play
Hmm.
basketball or whatever. They don't want to run track. I don't know. How many kids left off that 24 team that you had to replace for the 25 team?
I think we lost maybe one or two or
Oh,
three kids
so
from
you
the
didn't have
2014.
so you didn't have many seniors?
No.
Wow.
And then this year, the 25 team, we lost. No, 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 no. We lost one, two, three, five girls because we had some pole vaulters from the 24 season. We lost five girls. And then this year we lost three.
So not like Southwind where you were
Mm-mm.
third, boom, we only have one kid even
Mhm.
qualify, and then but fairly consistent. So you had a young team then that's been growing up with you here.
Yes, and our middle school, Collierville West, CMS is on its way up, but Collierville West has a really really good team. One of our middle schools has won the state championship like 4 years in a row, the
Oh
TMSAA
wow.
state championship.
Yeah.
So that let's see, last year was when we started to get a few of those kids, maybe like one or
Yeah.
two.
Hmm.
And then but then they won state again this year. So we really have a good feeder system in our town. Then the middle school coach is on the high school staff
Ooh.
um as well. So
Are they doing when they work with the middle schoolers, are they using the same language that you do and the same type of workouts?
similar, yeah. And because
Yeah.
they do train over here with us
Yeah.
sometimes, but not with us at our practice, but they have their own practices,
Right.
but they do train over here at our facility and then they have their own track too. But it's pretty much I think a lot of the coaches on my staff pretty like-minded.
Yeah.
So even though some of the workouts may be different, the strategies and the mindsets are the same. So
I hear two things that you've mentioned that I hear a lot in other successful programs, and it doesn't guarantee that you're going to win the state title because again, that's
mhm.
hard to do. Uh, but programs who are always in the hunt for the state title, those kind of things. I hear two things. One is a middle school program like
Mhm.
a dedicated middle school program. In fact, one former guest here in the Guild Connections podcast, Marcus Lowe from Kankakee, he is the head coach of Kankakee High. Actually, he's the director of track and field for Kankakee. So he oversees the middle school and the high school. So the middle schoolers, so as early as sixth grade, they already understand, they're getting coached in his philosophy of sprints and hurdles. They hear his terminology. So when they come in as a freshman, their training age is 3 of what to expect in his program versus like, oh, I don't know, I saw track on TV. Here I am. So there's an advancement there. So that's one thing I heard you mention that I've heard in other places. And two, you talked about an off-season program. I hear that in a lot of coaches who go on to win trophies at state and how important that is. How important for you are those two things for your program, the middle schoolish kids and the off season, not just doing the roughly 3 months that we have for a high
Mhm.
school season.
Well, I think it's real important, um, even though when I came here, the first championship, I think we had one of those girls or two of those girls that came from the middle school. Um, but you can't sustain have really top-notch program if you don't have good feeder programs.
That's a good word, sustain.
And by being in Collierville, in a town where we have two middle schools who feed into our high school. Especially when everybody's working together, and kind of doing some of the same things. Of course, middle school track is technical and it's a little bit more, I'm not gonna say more fun, but the kids are younger, but those kids want to be great as well. So it just it all works together.
Yeah.
It all works together. I think it's great for our community. Also, but our off-season program try to be as creative as possible. Pool workouts, all different
Oh, yeah.
types of stuff, grass, everything. We have an indoor turf facility, so even when it's cold outside, we don't really have to stop practice.
Right.
So the off season is really important. That's where we do all the work.
So so what would be your, we've got coaches listening right now that so some can't do an off-season program, meaning they coach basketball or whatnot, things like that, right? But some coaches maybe have thought about it, but they're not sure how to start it because there's no culture for it in their program. What would be your recommendation on how to start an off-season program? With the caveat that please check your state rules that it's even legal and all that kind of stuff, because there are different rules. Some states are so strict you can't have any access to your kids until the first day of practice. I
Mhm.
feel like that's more unsafe. I know why they have
Yeah.
that rule, but I feel like that's more unsafe than the opposite. But so, what would your recommendation? Someone's listening and says, "Man, I want to start this, but I don't. It's not even our culture. My kids are revolt, coach. What do you mean you got an
Right.
off-season program?"
Well, in Tennessee, the track doesn't really have any restrictions other than the dead period, which is in the summertime. You can
Okay.
do conditioning. And so I think what you do is you start it a couple days a week. Doesn't have to be every day. Maybe
Oh,
2 days, maybe 3 days.
yeah.
Make it fun. It's the basic fitness principles, pretty much, for track and field in your conditioning.
Right.
Some plyometrics, some sprinting, some grass workouts, anything you can do to make it fun, but at the same time getting the kids in shape. And as your team adapts, then your workouts in the preseason can adapt.
Hmm.
I think you should begin with the end in mind. Do you want to have an indoor season or do you want to just do conditioning? Of course,
Mhm.
if you want to have an indoor season, then your preseason conditioning may look a little bit different.
Mhm.
But if you don't plan to have an indoor season and you just want to start some conditioning for your kids, then you can plan it a little bit differently. But it's a no pressure situation. I take attendance, but I don't penalize kids who don't come to conditioning because they may be playing other sports or doing other things. Just I'm hoping you're ready when you come to practice. But preseason is no pressure,
Yeah.
and just you come, you work hard. We teach you and get you ready for the track season. But I just think you should keep it fun, keep it make sure they're locked in, of course. But just start off with no pressure. If it's your first time ever doing it, just get out there and have fun.
I love that advice because sometimes when we want to start something, we can't help ourselves. We're coaches. We just go whole hog, right? We like, oh, it's going to go 24/7. I love your suggestion of like start with 2 days a week or 3 days, whatever works for you. You don't have to go 5 days a week right off the
Mhm.
bat. Maybe that's year 2 or year 3 or something like that. So that to me spoke a lot about like it's better to get started with 1 day a week than it is to not do it at all.
At
So
all,
start with that
right?
if that's what is right for your program. How do you deal with knowing that? Not knowing what your percentages are, but I'm just going to use arbitrary numbers here. 50% of your kids go through an off season, 50% don't. How do you, when the first day of practice comes, so they're going to come in different levels of fitness, how do you
Mhm.
handle your workouts that way?
Well, so it was funny because we had this question last year when I hired a few new coaches, and we talked about this same thing right here. So even before you come to tryouts, whether you've done preseason condition or not, you know what the expectations are. You may have to run a mile in this amount of time. You may have to run this. After we have tryouts, then that's when we make the plan. And then we decide who goes into what group based on if we kept you from tryouts, then we put them in groups and design workouts based on where they fall. And then they
Right.
move groups as the season progresses.
Right.
So that's pretty much how
Okay.
we do that. But
Yeah.
everybody knows what the expectation is,
Right.
when you come to tryouts, and then based on what you did, and we do like a tryout, and then we'll do another time trial, and then we'll do another time trial, and kids move groups based on what
Okay.
how they're progressing.
So I've heard of like group training, especially with like distance or cross country runners, because
Mhm.
so you're just doing that. You're using that kind of same philosophy with sprinters, hurdlers, jumpers,
Yep.
etc. Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Now you said a word that I don't hear very often in track and field, tryouts. So, and I think I heard you also use the other word we don't hear for track and field very much, cuts. So
Mhm.
you have a tryout program, meaning not everybody gets to be on the team.
Well, in the last couple of years, we've kept mainly everybody because
Okay.
we had like a JV team and a varsity team, but we have so many kids
Mm.
that we will, to be cut, you really have to not come to practice,
Yeah. Yeah.
not do, but yeah, we
Yeah.
will.
I'm torn because on one hand, I love again, I mentioned, tall, short, big, small, whatever. There's a place for you in track and field if you come to practice, and I'm with you.
Right.
On the other hand, I don't know of another sport that doesn't have tryouts and cuts. Baseball has
Mhm.
tryouts and cuts. Football typically, and again, there's exceptions based on how many kids are coming out for the sport and things like
Mhm.
that. But other sports, that's just part of it. I'm going to try out for basketball. I'm going to try out for football,
Mhm.
etc. In track, it's always like everybody. And so I'm kind of torn. On one hand, it's like, man, if our sport wants to continue to evolve and be more serious, maybe we should. I also don't like a coach and a coaching staff who has a billion kids and they can't give a little bit more individualized
Right.
coaching because they do have a billion, and we're already understaffed compared to many
Mhm.
other sports. So I also see cuts being the right thing for that as well. So that was
Yeah.
just interesting. Okay,
It just depends on what type of team you want to be.
yeah, that's right. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
that's a really
type of
good point.
team, do you want to have?
Yeah,
Now, and that's, we don't just, because we don't arbitrarily just cut people,
right.
but you also, you got to think about track and field where they say you go to a meet and they only allow 3 people per event, or they only allow 4 people per event, and then you have all of these kids who you have kept on your team who
Yeah,
don't ever get to
yeah,
participate.
it's a great
You
point.
know, on
What
on a Saturday, they
what
don't get
what
to run at the big invitational,
what kind of experience are they having? That's right. That's a
right?
great point. It's a
So
good point.
you have to really, think
It's a really
about
good point.
what type of team are you having. You could cut down on a lot because there's nothing worse than a kid who can't ever participate.
That's a good
Why
point.
can't I ever go on the out of town trips? Or why can't, you know what I mean? And then if you having Tuesday meets as the coach, that means you're at the track on Tuesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday because you got
Yeah,
all these different levels of athletes.
great
And
point.
if you don't have the coaching staff to do that, then you have to, you know,
That's right.
figure out.
That's a great point. I know of so many people who were not what we maybe would call great athletes who became great coaches. And when I mean great coaches, I mean they gave other kids great experiences in our sport. So when I think about that eighth miler on your team, I'm like, man, that boy or girl might go on to become a teacher and a track coach because they had such a, they knew they were eighth on
Mhm.
your team, but they had such a great experience. And then I also go, wow, but what kind of experience if that kid never gets to run a team or a meet because of the restrict, yeah, that's a tough one, man. I see both sides, but boy, it breaks my heart that I just, not, I shouldn't say it breaks my heart. I see both sides. I literally see both sides of that, man. I think you nailed it with you said earlier you to coach. One of my mentor was Boo Schicksnyder. One of my favorite lines of his
Oh,
is
I love him. I
I
love
love
Boo.
Boo. I get to see him in 2 weeks. He's doing well, okay. When you're listening to this in December, it has already passed. here in August, in 2 weeks, August 15th or 16th, just in a town next to us, about 45 minutes away, Boo and Vince Anderson are
Oh my
doing,
gosh.
doing an 8-hour clinic. They're doing 4 topics each. Oh man, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I'm going over. I don't even coach
He
anymore. I'm going over. I
He
love
and
it.
Kiba Tolbert were here
Great
in
friend.
February with the
Yeah.
Murphy Track Club for a clinic we had here at the high school.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Well, Kaba has been on the podcast. Boo has been on. In fact, Boo's our number one most listened to episode. And Vince, I'm going to get him on. He's already said he would get on. I just need to get him scheduled, and I need to get him on here.
Gotcha.
So, um, what was I talking about? Holy cow!
You were talking about cuts, tryouts.
Boo's favorite. Thank you very much. I always need an assistant here as the coach. You can always help me out. One of my favorite lines from Boo was "You to coach, be to coach," and I think you're kind of echoing that of like, hey, what kind of program do you want? You're the coach. You got to decide. You can't do both. You can't do all things. So how are you going to run your program? And then which way ever you choose, go do it awesomely. Like, okay, go in and make that the best way. And I think that's what you've done there at Collierville. So 130 points, 131 points, then 155 points. Where do you go from here?
Well, the record is 166. The all-time record is
That's
166.
crazy.
Now, I don't across all classes.
Sure.
Now, our section has combined this year with Nashville and Memphis.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Wait, they combined Nashville and Memphis in one sectional?
So Nashville had like 35 teams or something in their section. Sure. So they split them in half. And then they took our section and put us together.
Dude, that's
so I don't know.
Heck of a section.
Be like,
yeah.
Yes. And so now we have to have a subsection and a section, which is fine.
Okay.
I don't know what the point total will be. I'm not really fixated on that type of thing. I don't go in saying like I was scoring 155 points. I kind of have an idea of where we should be.
Yeah.
But three-peating will be definitely icing on the cake. I don't care what the points are.
right. You control the controllables. You can't control where other people place their kids, and that because that affects your team score. You just but can you win? Okay, I put my kids in the right spots. I coached them well, and then we'll see where the chips fall. Dude, Alisa, that's so cool, man. That's amazing. So do you have a shot? I know it's early. It's August. You got a shot? Are you gonna win the three-peat?
We got a shot. We only lost 3 girls, and we've because the class was young when I got here.
Yeah.
We kind of pretty much. This is my first class that'll be graduating this year.
Okay.
They were freshmen, and so we definitely have a shot. And they want to go down in history as doing that. And so I think if we just keep our heads on straight and make sure we don't get too much senioritis and and depend on our youngsters are really good. Our youngsters are really, really good. And I have a great coaching staff, really, really dedicated, great. And so I think I'm not making any predictions here, but
don't do that.
But I think that we definitely have a shot, and we know that everybody's gunning for us. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're not gonna just go and take it from. They're not gonna give it to us.
Right.
We're gonna have to work. Just as hard as we've been working, but we're gonna go after.
You sound like your coach back in the day, right there. Holy cow! We still got to work, boys and girls. It don't matter. That's right. I love it. Alisa, man, congratulations again. This is so cool. I mean, again, it's the impossible task to pick the national coach of the year since we don't all compete, together. That would be a heck of a track meet, by the way. But to do what you're doing to leading young people, I say this for every coach, and I mean every coach. I say this to Mike Holloway at Florida, good friend. 99% of the kids you coach aren't going to go on to college or go on to pros, right? But 100% of the kids you coach are going to go and become moms and dads and business owners and teachers and reporters. And that's your true impact in society is you're raising up great young men and great young women, and you're giving them an amazing experience in this great sport of going to state and that being a big deal, going to pin relays, things like that. I mean, those are memories, in 20, 30, 40 years, that's what they're going to remember. They're going to remember winning a state title. They're not going to remember their PRs or what they ran at this meet specifically and things like that. They're going to remember, oh man, remember we went to Penn. I'd never been to Philly. I'd never been out of Memphis. Memphis, and we went to Philadelphia. That's crazy. That's so awesome that you're giving those experiences to those young boys and young girls, man. And that's the society, the world is better for your leadership, for your staff's leadership. We mentioned your administration and parents, things like that. That
Yes.
is what this all boils down into, man. That's just so cool. And it's cool that you get recognized with a really neat looking award. They've done a great job with their design of their award. And I can't
Yes.
wait to see you physically receive the award there in Dallas in a couple of weeks, and just be able to shake your hand, give you a hug, and just tell you you're doing a great job. And I'm really proud of you. We're all proud of you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm super excited. I love doing what I do. This is my 24th year coaching track and
Amazing.
field. So it just keeps getting better. And I'm just proud of the team, my staff, and I'm just so thankful to even have the opportunity.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I think it's highly important, and I can't wait to see you in Dallas in a couple of weeks.
All right. Well, I'll see you soon.
Guys, thank you for being here. This is a lot of fun. I'm recording these early, so I can't tell you if like next week is going to be the boys coach or was last week the boys coach. I don't know what order. I think Alicia's going to be first. Elisa's going to be first, and then the boys coach next week. So next week we'll do the boys coach of the year, and then the following week we'll be at the convention. Typically on that Monday, I do a live recording of the podcast, so we'll have that as well as our normal weekly one, and then we'll just keep having fun as we stare 2026 season 7 in the eyes. It's coming up next, and we've got a lot of amazing coaches that'll be sitting down with us, sharing their journey, and I'm super happy we had this one here today. So join us next week. We'll do it all over again and have some fun. See you guys.